This happened to me a long time ago, when I was still a young adult. I grew up in a small Siberian village that I do not want to name. My village was tiny. It was home to only around 500 people maximum. Everyone who lived there had families who had been there for generations. None of them could remember a life outside that village. Everybody had stayed there for so many years. What I'm about to tell you happened in the winter many years ago. I was awoken by the sound of a very large and a very loud explosion. I remember I was dead asleep, and I was woken up because all of a sudden, my entire room was lit up like a Christmas tree. I'm a bit of a light sleeper, so I woke up instantly, and the second that I did, there came the crash of something right along with the light. I think this boom woke up everyone in the village, probably all of the animals too. It sounded distant, not far away, but high up in the sky. And after a little while, the shock wave from it just hit us. Everything was rattling and shaking in my room, and a vase fell and smashed. You could hear the sounds of people around nearby crying and shouting and just being confused. Nobody had any idea what was going on. I tried to ask my dad what was going on, but he said he had no idea. He did not even bother putting on his coat or his boots, and he just ran outside to see what happened. I followed along with him. There was a crowd of people outside, and everyone was looking up at the sky. When I looked up, all I could see was this huge fireball taking up my entire vision. It was high in the sky, but so massive, I didn't think it was actually possible. I didn't think my eyes were actually seeing this. I thought maybe I was just dreaming. I just stood there, watching as the flames burned and the smoke poured out. And then boom. There were these pieces of debris that were hitting the ground. Some of them were small, but other pieces of debris were massive. At first, I heard a pitter-patter on a nearby roof as the debris fell in like a rain or a sprinkle. But after a few minutes, these large chunks started to hit the ground. One hit a house nearby and destroyed the entire roof. It completely caved it in. People started screaming and ducking for cover, and my dad rushed over to me and pushed me down to the floor. One fell really close by to us. It was only around a few meters away, and I remember feeling the heat coming off of it. It made my eyes water and sting, and I had to shield my face with my arm because it really hurt. It was so close to me. I think if my father didn't move me when he did, I would have been crushed for sure. It was bigger than my entire body. Some people ran and took cover in their own homes, and after a few minutes, nothing else fell to the earth. Once it was over, everyone gathered around. A few people were dead. One older woman, she could not move in time. She was just completely flattened under one of the pieces of debris. I could see the big splatter of blood and a squished arm just barely peeking out from underneath the rock. Many people lost their lives that night. At least 2 homes burned to the ground due to the heat and the flames from the falling debris. In the morning, the destruction was horrible. We were an independent village and had never had any government help. We built our entire community ourselves from the ground up. So when we saw that half the village was in ruins, most people started to cry. For most, this was their entire life. Any destruction meant that their lives were basically over. A few hours after dawn, we heard these really loud engines not too far away. None of us really owned vehicles because we were poor, but this sounded like a whole gang of them. After a few more minutes, 4 vehicles pulled up into our village. They were those 4x4 gas tigers that the military use. And sure enough, a whole gang of soldiers jumped out of these vehicles. They were all armed with weapons and started shouting orders at us and rounding us up. They gathered everyone just outside the village and made us stay there and wait. Some of the soldiers were trained medics and started treating the wounded who managed to survive. I saw some go to each of the houses, I think to search them. They wrapped up the bodies that they could retrieve in some tarp, and one of the vehicles carted them away. We were told that under the orders of the Russian military that our village was off limits due to a meteorite falling to Earth. They said that we would have to relocate temporarily while they collected samples and until they deemed the area safe for civilians is what they said exactly. They had set up a tiny camp nearby that was terrible. We basically were given tents and horrible food and barely any water. They would not let us leave the camp to go anywhere else either. They said that they had to keep us under guard because of some kind of precaution. They said that they were under orders and that was that. Over the next few days, they expanded the camp area slightly and set up some prefab buildings for people to gather, for places for the medic to work, and I think places just for them. Anyone who had any cuts or bruises or anything at all were taken into this medical building. They forced anyone with injuries to have blood taken and to undergo an examination. They did not give them a choice. And once those people were done, they started forcing this on all of us too. They took my blood 3 times in total while I was in that camp. They told each and every single one of us that all of our homes would be rebuilt once they had cleared the area and that it was safe. But that turned out to just be a lie to stop all of us from rebelling. More soldiers came to help with guarding us, and I saw a lot of them going back and forth every single day. At first, people were really angry and tried to leave and rebel. But one older man who got right into a soldier's face, the soldier hit him with his gun and he did not get back up. After that, everyone just stayed quiet and did what they were told. My dad told me to stay quiet and that it would not be for very long. I was still young, so I was a lot stupider than I am now. I was bored and hungry and angry. So one night, I decided I want to know what was happening. At night, nearly all of the soldiers were away from the camp since everyone was sleeping. I got really lucky that night. There would still be 3 or 4 soldiers in camp usually, one at every single corner that you can exit. But this night, I am not sure why, but there was only one. I managed to sneak away into the forested area nearby while he was walking around the perimeter of the camp. I wasn't sure exactly what my plan was. I guess I just wanted to see if they were telling the truth, if they were actually helping us or just lying to us. I did not manage to make it to the village or near any soldiers at all. Once I got a little bit into the forest, I noticed that some of the trees had burned down and some of the grass nearby too. There was now a clearing of burnt grass and burnt down trees, and in the center of all of this was a big rock. I could still smell the burning smell from all that distance away. It was big, I mean, really big. I guess they just hadn't searched the woods yet and were focusing on the village, and that's why it was still there. Either way, I got closer to it. I was curious. I had never seen a meteorite up close before, and I could not feel any heat coming from it. I got closer, and I noticed that it was really weird. The other pieces of it that had fallen were random chunks of different sizes and shapes where it had broken up, but this was like a perfect shape, almost like a perfect circular shape, a big sphere. It had a few parts where there was a cavity, like how the moon has craters. It had a few of these spaced all around it. I got closer, and I know I should not have done this, but I touched it. I put my palm inside one of the craters and I touched it, but I immediately pulled my hand back and yelped because I felt this burning sensation. When I looked at my palm, I could not see any marks or redness or burn marks or any kind of damage at all. It was like the pain was just in my head. And then all of a sudden, this rock, it just started getting brighter. It was like a lamp that was dimmed at first, but then got so bright, my entire vision was nearly white. I had to put my hands over my eyes just to block it out. It was at this point I heard some shouting and some heavy boots slamming down on the road, and so I knew I was screwed. I knew the soldiers had seen the light and were coming to get me, and were probably coming to kill me. I just stood there and accepted my fate because I knew that there was nothing I could do. After a couple of seconds, that bright light started to fade, and I heard this hissing sound, like when a pot lets out steam or a kettle. And once the light got low enough for me to see, I saw that there were these cracks forming in the rock. And this white-looking gas had already started pouring out of it. I breathed some of it in. I didn't even have a chance to move away in time, and I started coughing really badly. In just a few seconds, my lungs felt like they were clogged up, and my throat felt like it was getting narrower. I fell backwards onto the floor and was just clutching at my throat, trying to take as many breaths as I possibly could. But they were all shallow, and I could feel myself getting weaker. I managed to get a look at my hands, and they were swollen. They had really quickly become twice the size. It looked like I had become obese in just 30 seconds. My arms were the same. They got thicker and wider, and I had red marks all over and a rash. It looked like the skin was all cracked and peeling. At this point, a few soldiers got to me. They were all wearing suits and gas masks, and a medic got down and started examining me. I tried to talk and tell him, but he told me to shut up and be quiet. Another soldier brought something to carry me on, and they started dragging me away while the other soldiers gathered around the rock. I passed out sometime after then. When I woke back up, I was in the medical prefab building. I was still swollen, and I could barely breathe, but they told me that I would live. I was shouted at and screamed at for disobeying orders and for leaving the camp. They told me that I was lucky that they had not shot me. They all wore suits when attending to me. I was not allowed to see anyone else from the village for over a week. I had a lot of scarring, but most of the swelling went down and I survived. When my father finally saw me again, he broke down crying and told me that I was stupid for going. They had threatened me with death if I told anyone what happened, the soldiers did. So when my father asked, I just told him that all I saw was the debris of the rock and nothing else, but he did not believe me. And then he told me something really weird. He told me that the night they brought me back, he was awake. He said he tried desperately to see me, but that they beat him when he would not listen. And after that happened, and I was being treated, he said he could hear noises in the distance. He said that for a few hours that night, he heard gunfire intermittently. Not constantly, but every few minutes or so. He said it was coming from the direction I was brought from, and that he heard soldiers shouting all of the time. He told me that at one point, the soldiers who were treating me sprinted out of the medical building. They apparently picked up their weapons and ran to the forest. He said he heard one more thing other than gunfire. He said that at some point after those soldiers ran to the forest, he heard some screaming. I didn't really understand what he meant at the time since I was still so unwell, but he told me that it was not the soldiers screaming. He said he heard a scream that he could not describe. He said it was so loud and so scary, not like any animal he had ever heard before. In the few weeks after that, we were all moved to another village a few miles away. We were told that our village had become contaminated, but they would not really explain how. They eventually relented, and they said that the meteorites had destroyed the land and that it would not be safe to live there for many years. They told us that the meteorite had a lot of radiation and that the ground would not grow anything anymore and that anything there would die. I don't think they were telling the truth, but we didn't really have the option to go back. So we moved on and tried to build a better life. When I got older, I moved to St. Petersburg and found a better job. My parents refused to ever move from the second village, and they died there a few years ago from old age. I have not ever been back to my village since then. My skin still has peeling and scars from whatever that gas was that night. I was around 8 years old when this one happened to me. I was living in rural Virginia at the time. My parents are divorced. I would spend Friday to Sunday with our father in his apartment. My dad wasn't dirt poor, but not rich either. Every Saturday is movie night. We get pizza from Little Caesars and a $5 pirated movie from the local flea market. It's mainly an excuse to distract us while he gets drunk off cheap beer. This is one Friday in 2008. After school, my dad drives me and my sister in his pickup truck to the flea market. We walk into this big building. We walk past the countless rows of shops filled with old knickknacks and other garbage that no one really wants. We can't find the bootleg DVD store ran by my dad's friend. We find a new bootleg DVD store ran by a bald older white man wearing sunglasses. Me and my sister look through the small section of kids' movies. My sister wants Princess Protection Plan. I want this movie called Band Slime. The old man comes in while we were arguing and tells us, "You can have both of them for $5 while flashing a toothy grin at us." Dad must have overheard him because he threw $5 at the man and got us out of there. It's now 7 p.m. on a Saturday. We are sitting in the living room, pizza and soda in hand. The only light is the soft glow of the TV. We put on Band Slam. Everything is normal until the Band Slam competition performance. The film cuts to black. A man appears, wearing a clown mask and a stained wife beater. He starts jerking himself off while singing in gibberish. He finishes by taking a needle and jamming it into his penis head. My sister had already run out of the room screaming, but I was glued to the TV. The film cuts back to normal. My dad stumbles in angrily, beer in his hand. He orders me out of the room and he rewinds the DVD. I peek around the corner. He puts in Princess Protection Plan after ejecting Band Slime. He fast forwards for a good amount till a similar clip begins to play near the end of the movie. I hear my dad on the phone with the police on Sunday. The police show up on Tuesday. They question both of us for a bit. They question our father. They shame our dad for buying pirated movies. They take both DVDs for evidence. We never have movie night ever again. My dad tells us to never tell Mom, which we somehow oblige. I never saw the old man again, but the fact that he most likely knowingly gave us DVDs with that inside makes me really uncomfortable to think about. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. For backstory, I was admitted to a psychiatric hospital due to a psychotic break that I had. I was under a lot of stress back then. I had an anxiety attack. I then got that weird derealization feeling. Then I went nuts. I was in the place for about a month. It's not really what people make it out to be. It's actually quite nice. You can bring your own things, with exceptions to things such as rope and shoestrings. However, there are some really weird people there. I met a guy. His name was Richard. He was about 30 years old or so. He was a bipolar, schizophrenic man. Most days he was pretty well behaved and appeared normal. Other times he would go off the deep end and be completely insane. This one day, I am doing my daily job of cleaning the dishes. Richard, whom also has a role in the kitchen, well, in the seating area, he is being normal today. He is carrying on a conversation with everyone as usual. He is asking questions about life outside as well. He does not get to leave very much, so he asks others about new things. A new person. I'm not too sure what was wrong with them, but they were an absolute asshole. They tell Richard to leave them the hell alone. Richard gets angry, like really, really angry. He cracks the dude over the head with a broom handle. Me and 3 other people rush to stop Richard from really hurting the guy. The 2 nurses on duty come in and get Richard and the guy separated. They tell their stories. Richard has to go to isolation for bad behavior. The other guy gets nothing. When Richard is being yanked away by the nurses and a guard, he keeps screaming, "Don't let him do it to me. Don't let him do it to me." He looks right at me and says, "Don't you fucking let him do it, Anon. Don't you let him do it." I didn't really think anything of it at the time because he's just angry at the situation. 2 days later, Richard is out. and he apologizes to everyone. He's being really apologetic to everyone. He gets to me, and he looks at me like I've betrayed him. The only thing he says to me is, "Sorry, I had to do it." I just kinda give a nervous chuckle and say, "Yeah man, you really did." So we get sent to our rooms that night as usual. Lights were out at about 10. Richard is down the hall, and we are allowed to go to other patients' rooms. I decide I'm gonna go talk to Richard and see what's up. I gotta be back before 9:30 though. So I get to Richard's room. "Hey man, what's up?" Richard looks at me, then looks out the window and asks me to sit, and then he checks the door. I ask him what he's doing and he just says nothing. He sits back down and starts to tell me about the isolation rooms. It's apparently this small room. It's empty, with one window, and the walls aren't drywall like we have. They are some kind of soft wood. It smells like urine and feces in there. Pretty much a shitty place to stay. I ask what made him so angry. He starts to go on this semi-rant about how the guy was placed here to get Richard stuck in isolation forever. He says the nurses set it all up. I start to feel uncomfortable because he will not stop staring at me. I try to change the subject and he gets agitated and starts to check the walls like they are listening to him. I say, "Richard, nothing's there man, calm down," so he doesn't freak out. He asks if I'm in on it, and I say no, I'm not, and I ask if he's been taking his medicine. He says no, because they've been putting lead in it. I try to explain how he needs to take it, and he just does not listen. He just keeps getting really angry. It's the 9:30 announcement for bedtime, so I have to go. Richard asks me to stay a little bit longer. You know I can't, Richard. He stands in front of the doorway and makes me promise that I am not working with the nurses. I promise, and he finally lets me leave. I head on down the hall to my room. I turn to go in the door and notice something at the end of the hall. I turn to look and guess who? Richard is peeking out from his room at me. I go inside and lock the door. We were allowed to lock and unlock them if we wanted. It wasn't like a prison. They did have a window so the nurse could check on us, and they all had keys too. I lay down and keep thinking about Richard. I finally fall asleep after lights out. In the middle of the night, I wake up, just because I do that sometimes, and I'm just staring at the ceiling. I suddenly hear a tapping on my door. I think it's a nurse, and I look up. It's Richard. "Hey man, it's important, let me in." I tell him I can't let him in, and that he should go back to his room before he gets caught. This same exact routine for about a week. One night, I get woken up to the doorknob jiggling. This time I don't see anybody outside. I open the door and nobody is there, but a door slams down the hall, so you know who. I go back to sleep after calling the nurse. She dismisses it. I get woken up again, this time to, "Let me the fuck in, you deceitful piece of shit." I go to talk, and this asshole kicks open the door and he hits me right in the face. This dude is on top of me, choking the life out of me. I can't even breathe. He starts screaming about how I'm in on the plan to get him locked away for good, and how he's gonna make me regret this. I start to fade away. I can feel myself starting to pass out. The nurse and 2 guards rush in, grab Richard, and give him a sedative. I eventually get transferred. Be me. I was married for 5 years. I had 2 kids, 1 boy and 1 girl. I ended up getting a divorce. I found out that she was cheating while I was working, and I got custody of both kids. She gets the house, so I end up buying a place about 10 miles outside the city. It sits on about a dozen acres of land, mostly brush and pine thickets. It needs some TLC. Fast forward about a year. The place is all fixed and cleaned up. The little ones have settled in. Things are great. I eventually start working night shifts, better money and better benefits, so I get my younger sister to come over the nights I'm out to watch the place. Things are going great for a while. When I come home one morning, and my sister says that the 2 kids, they share a room for the moment, have been talking to their window around 1-something that morning. They are still fairly young, so I figure they might have been talking to an imaginary friend. I asked them about it later. They say they were talking to Mr. Longarms. I tell them that's a funny name to come up with for a friend. They tell me he's the one who told them it. I figure, whatever. Little kids have weird imaginations. A few weeks go by. My sister reports the same thing every now and then. I decide to put a trail camera up facing the kid's window for shits and giggles, and as a just in case. I never catch anything on it when I get the long arm reports, as my sister and I call them. My son gets sick one day. Sick enough he has to be admitted to the hospital for a while. Scarlet fever. I did not want to take a chance. The nights I'm with him, my sister is watching my daughter. About 3 days later, I am at the hospital when I get a call from my sister. Someone tried to break into the house using the kid's room as an entry point. I tell her to call the cops. She already had. Then I tell my son what's wrong. He stares right at me. Looks like Mr. Longarms tried to get inside. He is always wanting to come inside. What? I ask him what he means. He always wants to come in so he can take us somewhere magical, where there are as many toys to play with as we want. I tell him to rest up, then I head out to the house. I get there. About 3 sheriff cars are parked in the front. One is a K9 unit. The dog unit and a pair of officers are following a scent they picked up under the window. Another pair are inside the house with my sister and my daughter. One of them starts asking me questions about if I've seen anything weird. I say no, but I tell him about the trail camera. We walk out to take a look at it. Guess what? It's busted all to hell. We go inside and talk for a little while longer. The K9 unit and company roll back up, looking really confused. They'd followed the scent until they hit a clearing in the thickets, and then it just vanished. There is some more talking and some more conjecture. Then they pack up and leave. I go and talk to my daughter to ask what happened. Oh, Mr. Longarm saw that brother was still gone, and he decided to come in and keep me company. Okay, this thing has gone on long enough. I asked my sister if she can take my daughter with her for the evening. She says yes. After they leave, I go and set up a few more trail cameras higher up, then go back in, grab a shotgun and some shells, then post up in the kids' room. Night rolls around, almost no moon, so I turn the backlights on so I can see if anything walks up. Nothing happens, so I end up drifting off. I jolt awake at some time in the night. I look at my watch. It says it's 3 in the morning. I wonder what the hell made me wake up when I hear something like metal on wood. I realize it's coming from the window. I slowly stand up with my gun in hand. Then as quietly as I can, I walk to the window. This scraping noise intensifies, and the top of a head pokes over the windowsill. It's pale white. There are wisps of hair sticking up everywhere. It just says, "Hello, little children," in like a sing-songy voice. Its head pops all the way up. It looks like someone who was starved half to death. I yell something and cock the shotgun. It sees me. It makes a weird-ass shriek noise and reaches inside. Holy shit, the kids were not playing when they named him Longarms. He reaches a good 8 feet inside and takes a swipe at me. I awkwardly drop the dodge, and like an idiot, I pull the trigger. Sadly, it misses the thing, but blows one of my daughter's stuffed rabbits apart. The shot seemed to catch the thing off guard, and it recoils its arm back out the window. I get up as fast as I can, pump another shell into the chamber, and slowly walk towards the window. I hear a scuttling noise down on the ground, and see the thing scrabbling back away from the house. Its 2 long arms pulling it across the yard. I take a pot shot at it, miss. The thing shrieks/hisses and runs off into the woods. I decide that maybe living in the city is not such a bad idea. I clean up the dead rabbit with the gun within reach, then call my sister and tell her what happened. Long story short, my son got released a few days later. He and my daughter stayed with my sister while I put the house up for sale and got things packed. I did not see the thing for the week or so that I was there, getting the place ready. I have a story that happened to me. It's not really paranormal in any way, but it still really had me scratching my head and I'm hoping I can get some kind of answers. So, at the time, I was driving from Dallas to Houston. It was around 2 a.m. This was so I could avoid other cars and traffic, and also avoid any kind of cops. And also, I really just like the quiet. I eventually find an older Tacoma driving on the road to use as a sponge. Just for the record, a sponge car is a car that you drive behind and stick with on a long road. They are pretty much human shields for deers crossing the road, cops pulling over speeders, etc. The truck would swerve really hard every few minutes though. I just think he's drunk, so I shrug it off. About 40 minutes into the trip, a second truck pulls up out of absolutely nowhere. He blows past me and gets right beside the first truck. They both take a right off onto this small dirt road. I guess it leads to a farm or something, but the gate was closed, so they were only about 20 feet away from the road. At this point, I was genuinely curious as to what they were doing. I shut my lights off, pull a U-turn, and park on the shoulder. The first driver gets out of his truck, goes to the bed, and grabs a gas canister. The second driver is violently throwing his hands up, pointing at the first driver, pulling his hands on his own head, etc. Basically, the second driver was tearing into the first one. The first driver is throwing gas into the cabin, on the hood, in the bed. Shit goes dark for a second, and then the truck goes up in flames. The guys get into the second guy's truck and drive off slowly. I just sat there for a few minutes, thinking about what to do from there. I eventually decide on just turning around and heading back home. Can anyone tell me what exactly I witnessed?